welcome you all again to Monday, October 13th. And as all of you know, San Francisco State does not consider today a holiday. And so the class is meeting, which I'm perfectly happy with, and I'm looking forward to the class. I also will look forward to your papers. So let me stop the share for a moment. There we are. I see each of you, and I welcome you all again. And let me go to starting the class. What we'll do today, at least I'll make a few comments about holistic health. I'm intrigued in the early onset of cancer. We'll start that way. We'll make a comment about the internal language you've been doing this week, even possibly about the upcoming second part of the semester, but we'll focus on that more next week. I'll make a comment about your review of your self-practice, and then there are some more tasks to be done. Let me show it to the following one. It's probably better. This is the summary, as it's from Canvas to remind all of you what is due. So one, there's an anonymous assessment due. This is a little different than the other ones. It is looking at your experience a bit, what you have, an assessment of your self-healing project. It will be anonymous. I know it's hard. You just need to turn it in to get credit for attending today, but however, it will be read separately, independently. That's one. So it is a series of questions. I'll talk about that in a moment. Do submit your self-healing paper. I look very much forward to reading those. Those are the fun part for me as the instructor, really. We will talk about the next task, which continues the internal language, but it's really trying to transform how you think about yourself and for the future as well. I call it transforming failure into success. I think that's the major one. There's this ongoing, readings in, at least for today, Make Health Happen, which is really describing practice 10. There's very limited amount of asynchronous class this time because normally, remember, the class would be another hour and a half. This time it's just a very simple blog. It's just an experiential one about one of the students who was in this class who had broken her back and used the techniques in the class to recover her pain. And this is really a setup, some of these, for what the practices you'll be doing for the next 8 weeks after the midterm. Finally, there's a midterm due by next Monday before this class, by 12 o'clock. That's noon. The midterm is due. I'll make a few comments about that. That will be a take home. And please do and integrate. The purpose really is to integrate the material. I know. But let me talk for a moment about some of the comments, because this also applies as you're writing your exam for a take home, because it's very challenging now with AI. You can put the question into AI, which I will also do. But at least you want to integrate the material from the different assignments. And that's the real, hopefully, fun part. But when I look at the extra credit one, for example, which some of you did, and I hope you found it useful, bad eye into good eye, remember the person really becomes more specific, that goes to my self-talk. I'm saying I'm exhausted. Look at that state versus I'm recharging or taking time out. That's where language is so important. It's really practiced. Or the other one, while I'm struggling with my ongoing shoulder pain, at first I saw it just as something wrong with my body. But over time I realized how much stress, tension. So I start to pay attention to that. You can read that all, easily. But the real key is, and I think this will be important also eventually as you answer the take-home exam, you cannot just put generalities in. I saw that also with the evolutionary perspective lecture. Some of you, it's much too general. As if so be sure you pull in specificity. I think that's it. And that's the best answer I can give you to do really well on all of it. Okay. And then I really enjoyed a number of your question answers about the evolutionary perspective. And I thought one person really had a very good, many of you had good comments, but this one I think was a person from self-experience. They said, well, I don't think 3 meals a day is right. I like to graze and that fits for me. And so I won't I'll just make my minimal comments on that, and all of you can do that too. I'll have a momentary discussion a bit later. I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, we never ate 3 meals a day, by the way. So she was right. Or the person who wrote that comment, basically we ate episodically. Whenever there was, when we were hungry or we searched for food, we searched for it, we ate it. And then sometimes we almost had we essentially had episodic fasting. So maybe the concept of having intermittent fasting may not be as bad as we think about. It is clear that we do better if there's time periods in our GI tract that no food is present. So the system can have rest and regeneration. And so ongoing snacking probably is not very healthy. I think people didn't do that as much. But who knows? I wasn't around and none of us were. But at least as best as we can deduce from the hunting and gathering societies, whether it was the Kang Bushmen or others, it was more episodic eating. Which has transformed itself in many cultures to approximately 3 meals a day. However you do that, and a long period of not eating at night or other times. Anyway, just a moment on the upcoming midterm. Let me make a comment or two. There are 5 essay questions. Do you please answer? They are posted already on Canvas, so I won't go over them, but the major part I want to say about each of them. And they cover different pieces. They cover the asynchronous assignments and the readings. That's where you want to pull it from. But the notes you have taken, they do not really focus, it is not about self-experience. That's what you did on your self-healing papers. This is purely the academic side, okay? And I think that's the major part. But so you want to really draw from each of these pieces and submit some specific evidence, okay? I think otherwise it will be too general. And notice there are different questions. One deals with the evolutionary perspective of health. The other one looks at, I looked at the Dean Ornish one. I thought that was very interesting in the beginning because it applies and how does apply that same concept to possible other illnesses. And then there's one deals with the whole part of breathing and the asynchronous assignments. Another one is and the first two really, or the evolutionary perspective is really also about stress. And be sure you can incorporate definitely the work of Sampolsky. And then the one that deals with more trying to understand self-healing from the asynchronous assignments. That's the one, what are the themes from Amy Cuddy, Janine Shepherd, Madhu Azanani, and the others. And finally, a summarized piece, which again, you can also incorporate the Sampolsky as well as the asynchronous assignments. And that's about depression. And I think hopefully you'll find them interesting. And I look forward to reading your answer. So that's a specificity, and it's due by next week, Monday at noon. So before the class. Okay. I have a question for all of you. And I'm just going to throw this out as a question. Now I'll ask you some comments, shifting. But some of you may have known, and I've alluded to that already in class a number of times, so it's getting more and more shocking, that there has been a significant increase in early onset cancers. So what we look at is that late onset cancers have not changed very much. Those keep seemingly are staying the same or have gone down a tiny bit. But the shocking part is in the last 15 years, it's not, there has been an increase and continually more in early onset cancers, which include breast cancer, uterine cancer, kidney cancer, pancreatic cancer, melanoma, and in fact, colon cancer at increasing younger age. So that's people in their 30s and 40s. Something, it's sort of like breast cancer and colon cancer. When I was going to college and when my colleague, I had friends who were in medical school or in hospitals, they just almost didn't occur. And if somebody came down with those, almost everybody in the whole hospital would want to look at the person. This is so strange. But now people born in 1990, I know that's almost in your cohort for some of you, have 4 times the risk of developing early rectal cancer. Early, not when you're 80 or 90 or 70 or 80, in your grandparents, when then you would expect it. And they have double the risk already And that is increasing of colon cancer than compared to people born in the 1950s. And so the question I would ask, if you're sitting back for a moment, and I'll ask one or two of you to comment on that, how come? What do you think? What is going on? Remember, this looks very similar to if you look at the data of the 1950s. If you look at the data of the 1950s, we saw all of a sudden a massive increase in lung cancer. It truly was rather, lung cancer was sort of going steady like this. And then all of a sudden, in the 1950s, it started to go way up and up and up. And epidemiologists were very clear and very quick. They could identify some factors such as smoking. Then it took another 40 years or 30, almost a whole generation before finally we changed the rules about that. But so now what is going on potentially? Because this is really facing all of us, or you more than me even. I would be facing late onset cancers. You're almost all of you are potentially, you and your friends may be more affected by early onset cancers, which tend to even be more aggressive. So what do you think? Cora, what do you think is going on?
I think we have a lot more environmental factors like pollution, and our diets are definitely probably gonna like whatever we're eating, most likely, honestly.
Okay, that's one answer. How about Eva?
Yeah, I was gonna say the amount of like processed foods that are in our culture now, it's pretty intense and bad. So,
Okay. How about Vida?
I would say like the stress that we're dealing with in day-to-day life and environmental factors that play into that as well.
Okay. Any, how about Jordan?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Be a lot of other things like social diets as well. Even yeah, as well like environmental. Growing up in different areas too, I feel like have a big impact on that.
Good, great. Anyone else? Another comment, other out of the box thinking about it?
What about like medications, like overuse of like prescriptive medications? I don't know
Okay.
if there's a connection. I just was curious.
I'm making a note for myself to answer that question, okay?
Okay.
Anyone else have a comment? I love when people ask, think out of the box.
I feel like smartphones is such a big thing to it because we're tempted to like look on our phone, and then most of the time when we're doing that we're sitting down and not being active and just being like slouched around all the time. That definitely can cause health issues.
Great. Yes. I will say yes to all. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like
Oh,
agree with Alexandria because since we're not exercising as much, we're also not like boosting our immune system. We're like increasing like blood flow to our brain. So I think that might be a reason.
Mhm. Okay. Anyone else?
Um, I had something as well, going back to what Alexandria had mentioned. I feel like also some people they like look stuff on the internet to like try to like better their health and whatnot, but without like doing like more research as to what like they're implementing to their diet or like their habits. So it could be more damaging than like whatever like website or article they found like health benefits from.
Hmm. Okay. There, it is no one quite, I mean, to be really honest, as best as I can understand the literature, no one totally knows the exact factors, but there are a number of most likely, just like the smoking, in smoking, there seems to be more or less a single factor for lung cancer that was smoking. But even that didn't affect everybody because there were a number of people who smoked who never got lung cancer. So there's always this interaction between genetics and other factors. What you can say is that smoking, people who got lung cancer, 80% of them smoked, but 20% of the people who got lung cancer never smoked. And so so it means there's something more going to it. Some people are more vulnerable, and that's called maybe due to epigenetics or to your, to your how you process stuff or other factors in your family. So let me put a couple together, which many of you said. There's fairly good evidence that the following, which are your cohort, I put it, your cohort is a group of people born all together in its time period in the sense that has a similarity. And it may not apply to you specifically, but this is a very general one. And that is obviously lifestyle factors. Obesity is a clear predictor or a risk factor because it just, and it also, that depends also a little bit on the genetic backgrounds and other. The decrease in physical activity is a clear these are all correlational factors. So when you look at people who have cancer, then you can see, people who did exercise tend to have less cancer overall. Diet, which seems to be a major contributor. Again, nobody knows quite at what percentage, but it's maybe causing inflammatory disease. So our high incidence of pre-diabetes almost, or having a very high A1C already among many of you, that is indirectly linked to A1C is that your red cells are marked with sugar. That's a sort of a marker you can do by a blood test, and it checks sort of your sugar exposure, you could say, over the last 2 months, more or less. And that measure is much higher now than ever before. It may be interactive. If I eat more fast foods, whatever they may be, more ultra processed or more, and I don't exercise, then that's again may interact with each other. Possibly the foods have more pesticides, herbicides in, at least in the US. Almost all the grains you eat are sprayed or with glyphosate just before harvesting. Ironically, not that that is not done to kill the weeds. It is done because now it almost kills the plant that allows the seeds to come out more. So you can harvest more efficiently. Then we have an implicit shift in our and some of these things are going on for a while. So we have a shift in our exposures. I still remember a time when I went to supermarkets and the only packaging was in paper bags or stuff like that. Then there was a shift that almost all the packaging we see moved into plastics. And now literally every item in the supermarket is wrapped in plastics, and plastics in most cases act as estrogen in the body and the molecules. And that's probably that may contribute to the development of cancer. Let's say it that way. So you have herbicides, pesticides, plastics. There are many other factors like this. And then we have environmental pollutions, although they are much less for those who ask their parents who may have lived in LA for 30 years ago or so, or 40 years ago, they would know that LA, you could not see the mountains at all, or you lived in Denver, the same thing about 30 years ago. And now the air is much better as we have slowly controlled the exhaust. Although your parents have been more exposed to air pollution because of the lead poisoning they got, because all the gasoline used to be leaded, and that would spray lead into the air. And also a whole cohort from 1928 till when lead gasoline was banned, which led to lead pollution for everybody. The other part maybe, there are many factors. I'm quickly listing some of them, and we don't know. Is a shift in the bonding relationship or early bonding between parent and child, because so many more of the parents now both are economically forced to work and the children are more left on their own in a different way. So that's another cofactor. And the final cofactor is maybe you can blame not you can't even blame your mother. You maybe want to blame your grandmother. There's no blame here really. And that is that, remember, if your grandmother was exposed to toxins, whatever they may be. So that's, you have to sort of go back. For some of you, your grandmother would be, you were 20, your mother was 20, is 40, 50 years ago or so, right? 50 or 60 years ago for some of you, or maybe more. So that your grandmother was exposed to these toxins, that meant that when she was pregnant with your mother, that would have impacted the epigenetics of your mother's eggs, because the eggs she had as when she was a fetus inside her mother, those eggs were it was already changed, the epigenetics of that. And since when the baby is born, that's all the eggs she has. So in a way, you were indirectly impacted by your grandmother. Then there was a shift at that whole era also of a decrease in breastfeeding that's still ongoing, even though people would like breastfeeding, but it occurs less mainly because of economics. We have a horrible, from my immoral system that women must go back to work for economically, while for the first year they ought to have equality and should be able to take care of their children or to breastfeed. That's my bias as a biologist, keep in mind. And at that time, they should not lose the economic disadvantage of not staying at their job. Okay. And finally, somebody raised the question about medication. I thought that was a very interesting one. And that is the big shift in our the microbiome. Many of us, many of you or your mothers early on already were medicated with lots of antibiotics, which would have killed part of the human biome, which may make an indirect effect. I have not seen much of that in terms of research. I mean, there's lots of evidence on that. Whether that will lead to cancer or not may not be clear, but it may lead it all together. It may reduce our immune competence. And if you think of cancer being an illness where somehow our immune system is not very competent, because we always are having cancer cells, but if all the other cells in your body are very healthy, cancer just doesn't grow. It has just no opportunity to expand. So that's a kind of different model. Anyway, that's my diatribe. I don't know if that's useful or not. But what is clearly what you can do, the data, and that's why I brought this up. What can you really do? The evidence indicates that an early life healthy diet is associated with a risk of a reduction of early onset colorectal cancer. That means much more fiber food, much less really highly processed foods, much more kind of veggies with fiber in it. Avoid the toxic chemicals and plastics. Some of you, don't even know you're being exposed because you may be living in areas where there's intrinsic exposure. And that data has been around ever since the 1950s, basically, and was exploded in the late 60s and 70s when the big cases of these massively polluted sites occurred in the United States, like the Love Canal outside of Niagara, near Buffalo, where people all came down with cancers. And it was due to that the houses were built upon areas with massive industrial pollution, or people who lived outside of St. Louis in a certain town where the water or the stream came from a nuclear processing plant, and all these people got excessive radiation for years. They had no idea about it, and many of them came down with cancers. Okay, so sometimes there are areas we have control, and there are areas we have no control. So to me, holistic health, at least a focus is to do control, okay? And that always reminds me finally of the Nissen-Taleb rules. Remember, anything that's not part of our evolutionary background, be more skeptical, and it could be harmful. And then for healing, look at one's life and remove the negativity. And whether, I know many of you or some of you have stopped smoking and now use, vaping. I have no belief from my bias. Vaping is not a normal evolutionary perspective, background. It will show harm just as smoking did in another 20 years. That's a prediction I will do, but that's my bias as a kind of crazy instructor. And then finally, we think of cardiovascular disease. The data is quite overwhelming that sugar increases cardiovascular disease more than fats. So the more sugar you have in your diet, the more fat you will have with the cardiovascular disease. So that's the major part. Let me want to shift? I'll just talk first. I'll talk for a moment. Let me shift for a moment. And I think so we have time. I'd like to, in a moment, discuss with each other practice number 8. Okay. In that, meet in a group and listen to each other's language as they describe it and provide the feedback as they are talking about their language use. So when the person is describing what they're doing and they're saying, I had to do this practice, or no, I chose to do the practice, interrupt them and say chose. That's very difficult to do, but it's a way to sharpen our own self-observation. Okay? So please go for the next few minutes, review your practice 8 altogether. Any questions on this? As I gave this dialogue or monologue? None? Okay, so let me set you up in the groups, breakout rooms, assign automatically. We have,
Hello?
yes?
Sorry, I do have a question. It's we just like skipped 6 and 7, right? Like
Yes, we
just went
correct.
Okay, all right. That was
Correct. We just did, no, very good. We moved into, and that's because it doesn't fit the whole semester, basically. So yes, we did practice. That's why I jumped to practice 8 on language. I'll make 10 groups. I'll create. And
It says there's a self-practice log 9.
there is that. It should be I think the practice.
I think that one was drains and gains.
Yes.
Yeah, I was
Oh.
gonna say that was the energy drains and gains one we did,
Yes.
around Labor Day.
Okay, thank you for that.
Hey, Professor, I got a question as well.
Sure.
So when I submit my paper, I'm just going to drag the document. Can I also, in that same assignment, just turn in all of the practices as well?
Yes, just possibly put them as one big
Put them all
file.
in there?
Right. Yes.
Fine. All right, cool.
Correct.
Oh yeah, Professor, I got a question real quick. Yeah, so it's basically like you just adding everything that we've done, like exercises, gratitude visits, all the files in the PDF versions, and then you submitted it with the
paper.
Yeah, with the final essay. Okay, right.
The reason of doing that is there's no easy way I can look at your paper
Yep.
and your logs again to check back and forth if they're not sort of in the one location. Otherwise, I have to keep going from your paper to going to each of the individual practices on Canvas, and it just drives me crazy. It takes me hours.
So you didn't want us to copy and paste all of them. That's 40 pages. I don't think you want us to do that, right? Just put a file.
Just put them all as a file at the end, each of them. Great. Okay, let me ask a few questions about on your papers, because overall, who found when you look back? I know it's a total pain sometimes to look back and summarize it, but who observed that basically, gosh, I had some benefits of it, that I found benefits? I'm always impressed that people report yes, that they found some benefits. Any of you found that your symptoms decreased by chance? That you had symptoms that changed? Like your headaches were less? Great, Amanda. Or great. Are either one of you going to share what symptoms changed? You don't have to, but that's...
I'll share. I guess I tend to be very obsessive worrier, kind of a thinker, like naturally. I don't know if it's so natural, but naturally. And so that really would impact my day-to-day life, getting stuck on thoughts and not being able to move on to the next thing. And one of the main practices that was really helpful was the diaphragmatic breathing. I had never heard of that before, and I've heard of all these other different types of breathing practices, but that one was significantly different for me, to the point where even in my day-to-day life now, I'll notice myself do it almost unconsciously, and I'm like, wait, am I breathing diaphragmatically naturally? And then the other one that was the one we did just this week, which was the self-talk, was one of the most major improvements in my day-to-day life. I noticed oh, the reason I get stuck so much is because I sort of internalize all the external things, and then kind of have a negative self-talk around it. So those two components were kind of good ways for me to continue transitioning through what I have to do during the day, like work, school, homework, and things like that. So yeah.
Good. Amanda, that's great. Let me just give a fun comment for a moment, okay? What you
Okay.
said, when I get stuck. I would say when I'm pausing, because pausing has a dynamicness to it. When I'm stuck, I'm still fixed. Anyway,
Okay, thank you.
no, it's just, and you can listen to my language and equally change it all the time as well. Anyone else who would like to comment on a benefit they may have experienced or a symptom decreased? All of you look so
Hello?
quiet.
Hello? May I?
Okay. Well, I'm assuming that a number of you had benefits. At least that's what happens usually. Remember
Professor Pepper,
yes?
Emilio wanted to share.
Okay, great. Please
Hello?
share.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Hello. So, yeah, similar to Amanda, I also felt like this last one with the internal dialogue helped me a lot with like punctuality and being on top of things because I think that I often kind of get stuck. Or I won't say stuck. You said pause. Oh, whoa, that was the exact same thing. That's crazy. Anyways, sorry, I'm stuttering. Basically, what had happened was I used to always be kind of like, oh, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. And then I noticed that that was something that was making things a lot harder for me in the long run. So then when I kind of shifted that to, what am I doing now? I can just do it now and get it out the way. Then I feel like all the stress of everything else kind of got out the way and I had a lot more time to myself and for myself, I felt like.
Oh, that's great. You know, I mean, the way I look at the practices is that basically, if our bodies can be kept quieter, it's easier to cognitive changes. So if I can, that's why we did the practice. But maybe for a future time, we start with this practice eight as number first one and do the following. We don't know yet. You know, it's an arbitrary sequence, but I'm glad that it is beneficial. Let me go on for a moment. Today, as I said, there's an assessment due as well at the class that looks at some questions, also looks at the part of clarity of mind. I'm intrigued in that and symptom changes. It's a scale from 0 to 10 or stuff like that. Please fill it out. And as I said, the answers, we'll look at it anonymously, even though you should know that technically I have access to it. I'm just being honest to you. I will not use it, but I will, for a moment, mark that you have filled it out and give you credit for that. Okay. So please do fill out the assessment again after class. And I want to make a few more comments about about holistic health, integral medicine to match what we did before. And then go explain the next practice as well. Okay. These are just comments. It's somewhat cynical. I mean, I should not ever show these or think about it, but there's a piece of that. Sometimes a patient cured is a patient lost. That definitely is true for the pharmaceutical industry. They are much more interested in developing medications you must use day after day after day than one that would be a single cure, because then you lose there's no more benefit. And also remember the emphasis on drugs that need to be used continuously. I think that's really, and the emphasis on drugs that can be developed for people who can pay it. So for people, if the illnesses occur in locations around the world where there is really the people cannot afford medications, pharmaceutical companies tend to be are not very interested in finding cures. That was the whole part of the malaria finding medications or treatments for malaria, because the people who have malaria tend to be much poorer usually. So it needs to be like the Gates Foundation or other foundations that tend to support that research, but not industry. If I make a quick comment about this mind-body medicine, but keep that in mind for a moment. That's a summary of the last couple of lectures. I think it's a sense of holism, that we are a system that means mind, body, spirit, our ecological system, and our spiritual perspective all put together. Another part that is really not, although it's obvious for anybody who works in healthcare, that everybody is unique. But remember, most research studies aren't designed that way. They're designed for group data. So what we have is an average, and most people may benefit, but there are always people who don't benefit, and some people who benefit extremely. But it's really useful to know who are those. That is less studied. So each of us is unique. You know, we have all, You even notice when you get a cold or the flu, some of you, your nose is congested, others have other symptoms. It looks like they're the same and yet different. Finally, remember there's a healing partnership between you and your provider. You want to work together and be open to many systems. It's not one or the other. It's not just only allopathic medicine, but it could be working in conjunction with yoga, homeopathy, massage, spiritual healing. And it's very interesting when I think of it. I was just at a meeting last Saturday evening with researchers. We're talking about the future careers. And it's clear that if you have, I could ask which career is probably AI proof. Which career will most likely ChatGPT or any of these kind of AI or large language models approaches not affect very much? Any career that probably does direct hands-on healthcare, if you're intrigued in healthcare, those careers will definitely are not affected much by that. But if you maybe do pure psychotherapy, which people are now doing on the web, those careers maybe slowly decrease because the AI can do that almost better at times. Remember, you want social and community support. We are part of a system. We live in a world in the United States where that really is so often missing, except in more traditional communities. Really health is really often a transformation of your life. That's already what you have all heard about and read. Prevention of illness lies in changing your lifestyle. It may not be the only thing, but it's the piece we have control over. And that is the part. This looks at self-care. I'm very aware that there's a major disease factor, and that is corporate profits that counters that. But self-care, at least, is where you have individual responsibility. It doesn't mean you'll get well, but at least it helps on regeneration. And then many illnesses, at least chronic diseases, are found in the environment and lifestyle. I think we have said that many times. And then there's intrinsic belief. And you've seen this now with a couple of the blogs and people the body has an innate healing ability. It's really remarkable. If you have any doubt about that at all, just if you have shaved your legs or you shave your face and you cut yourself, notice you don't have to do anything. The tissue just heals itself, unless you have hemophilia, which is very rare, a clotting disease. But for most, the tissue just heals. So you want to support that healing process, and being highly stressed inhibits that to a certain extent. And then there's a possibility, a broader perspective, that healing may be possible. Maybe, and that's what, again, the blogs try to point out, is that there may be possibility that stuff we think as chronic, it just means that medicine hasn't yet found a way to cure it. Positive wellness is more than the absence of disease, remember. It's not just not having pain, it's feeling alive and alert. And then illness isn't always bad. Many of you have been sick, and in the process of getting sick, you got reflection, you changed your life. I know some people have got major heart attacks. It was the best thing that happened to them. I mean, not when it happened, but when they look back, all of a sudden it meant they had to change their jobs, their focus of life, and their life became much fuller. And then the agents of disease may not always be the causes of the disease. Remember, this is a very old argument of the 19th century between Louis Pasteur, remember he's the father of the germ theory, and Claude Bernard, who's another French researcher. And the idea is that all of us are exposed by bacteria or viruses, but not all of us get sick. So maybe the terrain on which the germ lands is equally important. Now, if the germ is very virulent, and the terrain may have no power, but in many cases, if your health is pretty good, you'll be able to cope with it. And then self-responsibility is a major factor. Okay, and that reminds me of the jokes. This is my diagnosis. Don't waste your time, looking it up. I already have consulted Siri and Alexa. You all have seen these kind of jokes in medicine, etc. Okay. And then finally, about the language stuff, worrying is like a rocket share. It gives you something to do, but it gets you to nowhere. Well, you've been sitting much too long, and me too. So why don't you just stand up for a moment? You can just clap around, really move back and forth. switch, you know, and for a moment you can just really move. However, Gregory, yes, you can get up to. I know it's so hard to do that once you're sitting, and Catherine, you know, just move. You really reach to the ceiling. You really reach up like you you can almost bounce. Ah, at least I'm stretched for a moment. Okay, took a big breath. That is okay. And as I'm sitting in my room here, I can hear the rain outside, so I'm also move inside. Okay. I hope each of you felt a tiny bit better. Let me explain this week's practice for a moment. It is rewriting failure into success. Okay? Let me give an example in sports. And there are many of these. What I mean by failure into success. How many of you have said this week, damn, I should not have done that? Any of you? It's as simple as that. Oh, I shouldn't have watched another streaming video. I should not have drank another beer or whatever. I should have gone to bed earlier. I don't care what it is. I should not have yelled at my friend. Can all of you think of stuff like that? Or I should not. So let's take the example of drinking a beer or something, or alcohol. You went to a party this weekend, and then you drank one beer or one wine or one whatever you drank, vodka or whatever, or you played beer pong, and then the next morning you feel shitty, and then you say, I should not have done that. The moment you say, I should not have done that, you're training your brain to do it more. Because in order to say, I should not have done that, I have to evoke the memory of doing what I did, which is drinking too much, and then put a cross through it. But I've just trained the pathways in my brain to strengthen. And remember, neurons that wire together, fire together. So the real key, whatever happens, however bad or good or something, where you say, I should not have done that, what you want to really do is to say, look at the event only once. And then you have to ask the question, given the wisdom you have now, how would you have done it differently? If that makes sense. So you go back and then you see yourself doing it in a new way. Let me give an example and do it in the body. I'll give this as an example. Last night, let's say, I was lonely. I walked into the kitchen. I walked into my house when I got home. I hung my coat up on the wall. I walked into the kitchen. I was a blah. I sat down and there was a beer in the fridge. I opened up the fridge, drank a beer, and then I noticed there was another leftover piece of cake. You know how you feel. So then I pulled a piece of cake out. I ate that piece and there was another piece there. Then I ate another piece. And then I finally had a second beer, and then I finally just rolled into bed at 2 o'clock at night. And this morning I just felt miserable. And I said, I should not have drank the beer and ate the cake. Is that familiar? The moment I do that, I would see myself doing it again. And I just trained myself that this event occurs again, I'll do the same thing more. It's just like when you say, I should not smoke. Instead, what I want to say is, I did it. And at that moment, I could not have done anything else. That is true, because I didn't have the skills yet to do anything different. But now I have the wisdom. I look back and I could say, what could I have done differently? Well, I walked in and I imagine myself. I see myself getting home, hanging my coat up, feeling just as miserable, start taking a pause, realizing how that I felt lonely and a bit sad. I then stopped, I took a pause again, looked up, and then I went to my cell phone. I called a friend of mine. We talked for a little while. I had a glass of water in the fridge and went to bed. Can you see how I rewrote something? And you do the same thing in sports. So if you are doing, let's say in rhythmic gymnastics, where I was a sports psychologist, I worked with the U.S. rhythmic gymnastics team. When we want the young athletes to say they missed the hoop, you're catching it. The key is, I missed it. You only say that once. Thereafter, you never remember it. And if somebody, then you ask, given the wisdom I have now, how would I have done it differently? Oh, I would have thrown it higher, lower, whatever. And then you rehearse the appropriate way. So every time that memory comes up, how you missed it, you don't let the memory develop. You substitute a new behavior in it, the new memory. Is the exercise clear to all of you? Okay. So what I'd like you all to do for a moment is to evoke a memory or something that happened this week. It can be very serious or not, where you would say to yourself, I should not have done that. You could have, let's say you forgot to call your mom. Okay, I should have called my mom, right? But think of something, and when you get that knot your head, when you get the memory or the event where you said, I should not have done that. I'm just looking at your faces for looking at the agreements. Most of you got it. Cora, you got it too? Elena also? Great. Now what I'd like you to do is see yourself doing the analysis and identify a way you could do it differently, a new way. Like I gave the role model, really feel and see yourself doing it a new way. So if I should have called my mom last week and I did not, I should have called her, right? That's the same. Okay, I see myself, it's Tuesday or Wednesday, and I see myself putting a note on my text on my cell phone reminding me to call my mom tonight. And the notification comes up, I call my mom. Notice I'm seeing a new way of doing it. Think about that. Sometimes it's not easy. And for some things which are out of your control, nothing can change. Then one accepts that happened and say, that's life and it's a learning experience. But if you can only change you cannot change anybody else. Can you all think of that? A new option? That means yes. Realistically, Lily acted out. Great. Michael, I like that very much. And Brandy the same way. It's just great to see the response. Also Quinn. Okay. So in a moment, I'm going to put you in breakout rooms again. Listen carefully. And I'd like you all to share with each other the new way you're going to do it. Is that clear? So you share with each other the new way you're going to do that. I'm going to put you into breakout rooms for just a minute. Very short. So Lily, if only about 3 minutes max time.
I didn't get like an invitation for a breakout room.
Oh, were you in the class earlier today?
Yeah, but for some reason it kicked me out, but I was able to log
Oh,
back in.
I take it that's obviously personal for you. No, I'm sorry. I should not make fun of life. I'll put you into room number 7, okay?
All right. Thank you.
I have just one question of all of you. How many of you not only told the new story, but also the old story? Is that clear? I think most of you. Am I correct? You explain. So what you see is how much your brain is still committed to wanting to tell the old story, which means you keep training yourself to tell the old story. And that's your behavior. So the key of this practice really is to say, it happened. Looking back, it's like you say, I wish I could have done it differently. Well, I did it. I didn't have the skills yet to do it any differently. If you hurt somebody, then you can do you can ask for forgiveness. I'm not saying what you did is right, but the key in your brain is what you want to say, it happened. And the moment you even think about it, you want to imagine your new behavior. So then you train your brain to do it differently. Did that make sense? That means yes, this means no. And if you look at that for outcome of data, then you get something like this. When people really practice that, their procrastination goes down, their productivity goes up, and they feel more energy. Because instead now you move into action instead of only thinking about. Okay? Let's see. Now, in terms of language, I don't think I read this. I'll do this anyway. A poem called The Two Wolves. I don't think I did this last time. The Two Wolves. This is a Cherokee story. One wolf is evil. It's anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regrets, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, false pride, superiority, ego. The other is good. The joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion and faith. And the grandson was talking, that was his grandfather, Cherokee's grandfather was saying this, and his grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, which one wins? The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. And with our language, if I keep feeding, I should not do that, you'll keep doing that. If you see where you want to tell the brain where you want to go, not where you don't want to go. And I think that's really useful to think about. Okay. And finally, for today, keep in mind combining the change in language, body, posture we've talked about, and breathing. So when a stressor occurs, or you have a negative thought, what you want to do is shift your posture, look up, breathe lower, and then change your thoughts. That is much more powerful than trying to just change your thoughts. It works out. And here I can show you the data on that, which I'll end up for today. There will be this. So basically, if you just think of some stressful event for yourselves even. Just think about it. Evoke it. And how you may want to talk about it differently. But the moment you have that event, now you shift your body posture, look up, now you breathe lower, and then you change your thoughts. And when you do that, this is what the data would look like. If you do that with posture, breath, and language change, you have much more effective reducing negative thoughts and anxiety than if you just try to change your language. It's most impressive. And if you look at what people experience and say, you can see it very clearly here, what they're saying. Here's an example of the students doing this. They just try to reframe. That's only changing the language inside their brain. After changing my internal language, I still felt the same thought. But when the person instead, people do both practices in ABA design. They said, I do my posture change first. I do a breath lower. I reframe. I instantly felt better about my situation after adjusting my posture. or look at the bottom. Look at the fourth one down. I began to lift my mood up. However, it didn't improve my mood. I still felt bad afterwards, and the thoughts are still stayed. That's by trying to change your language only. But by combining the posture, breathing, and reframing, remember, I began to look up from the floor, upward toward the board. I felt more open, understanding, and loving. I didn't allow myself to let myself get down. The data really is surprisingly overwhelming how powerful that is. Let me go close this off for a moment where I am. I think we're almost near the end of the class, so far I can see for today. Yes. And I would just say to each of you, enjoy. I look forward to receiving your papers. That's one. Two, please fill out the assessment as soon as possible. I appreciate that. And three, enjoy integrating the material for the exam. It's posted on Canvas. Open up the link for the midterm, and then it will get you to a file with the 5 questions.